Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you so much for watching this part 2 Astrology of Canada webinar, whether you're watching live today or rewatching it another time. This is part 2, where we're going to review the solar return chart of Canada for 2021 to 2022. So from June 30th, 2021 and June 30th, 2022, and we'll get into what exactly a solar return is. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Meg, and I am a mystic, astrologer, musician, artist from Canada, currently residing in Belgium. So I've been studying the astrology of Canada quite intensely over the past year, and I'm very excited to share my findings today. I want to preface this video by saying that it's going to be kind of intense what we're looking at, but I have good news that the new solar return we're stepping into for June 30th, 2022, when Canada has its new solar return, it's a lot better of a chart. So we're at the end of this very challenging chart that Canada has been in for this past year. And I'm making this video webinar on June 20th. So there's only 9-10 days left of this very challenging chart, and we're going to get into that. Okay, so just a little bit of an overview. We're going to look at what is a solar return chart. We're going to analyze and interpret the solar return chart, and then do a little recap of key points and themes. Okay, so what is a solar return? I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're listening, you know, but if you don't, that's okay. A solar return happens every 364 days when the sun comes into the exact same degree position as it was on our birthday. So we can do a solar return for a person, we can do a solar return for an organization, and in this case, we're doing it for the country of Canada. So this is the solar return chart of Canada that is from June 30th, 2021. And this gives a whole energy, the overview energy of June 30th, 2021 to June 29th, 30th, 2022. And as we can see, the sun is back at 8 degrees in Cancer. So this is when we get our solar return chart, when the sun goes exactly back into 8 degrees Cancer, as it is in the birth chart of Canada, which we looked at that in the part 1 of this webinar. And I'll put the link for the part 1 Astrology of Canada video, where we look at the birth chart of Canada. I'll put that link in the description of this video. So yeah, this is our solar return chart. And we can see that most of the things are in the above upper part of the chart. We can see that the sun is in the 12th house. We're going to get into that. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 planets retrograde. There is a lot going on. We're going to get into here. Okay, so my first astrological impressions of this chart are, so last video we talked about what are the big 3, the sun, moon, and rising, our most important placements. So the big 3 of this solar return chart is all in water signs, which is pretty rare. I know just a handful of people in my life, maybe 2 or 3 people in my life that are people that I've done birth charts from, not countries, that are triple water, sun, moon, and rising. And I've noticed with all of these people that they're highly, highly sensitive, extremely sensitive. The water signs are the most sensitive. They're highly intuitive and empathic. So in this chart, the sun is in Cancer, which the sun will always be in Cancer for every solar return chart of Canada, because that's what our sun sign is. The moon is in Pisces, very, very sensitive placement. And the rising is in Cancer. So double Cancer, sun and rising, and moon in Pisces. So we're going to get into that. Very, very sensitive. The sun and the planet Mercury are in the 12th house. So if you guys watched the part 1 of this video series, you might remember that the birth chart of Canada has a 12th house stellium and a Pisces stellium. So remember, a stellium is when we have 3 or more planets in the same sign or house. So Canada's birth chart already has a lot of things in the 12th house. And when we have our solar return, and there's things in the same house that we may have a lot of that in the birth chart, it amplifies it even more, and it highlights the energy of that house. So the sun, our most important placement really in any chart, is in the 12th house, ruled by Pisces. Mercury's there as well. The 12th house of sensitivities. Pisces, I think, is the most sensitive sign. Things that are hidden, things that are deeply hidden, the outer realms, the psychic, mystical realms. So, okay, we're going to talk about that some more. The one stellium, the main stellium that we have in this chart, is a 9th house stellium. So very different from the 12th house stellium in the birth chart of Canada. The 9th house is ruled by Sagittarius, and it is the house of philosophy, higher learning, higher knowledge, foreign places, foreign people, traveling, all that Sagittarius stuff and more. We're going to look at that. And also what's very, very interesting is Canada in this year that we've been in, this solar return year, has had its Jupiter return. So a Jupiter return happens every about 12 years, where Jupiter comes back into the sign that it was in the birth chart that we're looking at. So Jupiter is back in Pisces. Canada is having a Jupiter return. And also my last big first impression of the chart, which we'll get into, it's kind of hard to see here in the chart if you don't know astrology, but we're going to look at it, is there's a lot of heavy Saturn aspects. So what is an aspect? An aspect is the relationship between two planets, two placements. And the aspects are all the things that are here in the middle of the chart. So we're going to look at really heavy Saturn aspects. So this is also not a normal chart. I didn't put this here in my first impressions, but I'm just kind of feeling to say this right now. This is not your average normal chart. This is a chart that has a lot of very sensitive placements, challenging placements. We're going to look at all that. This is not an easy peasy chart. So a lot of the chart themes we're going to look at, I've already mentioned. It's a challenging year, extreme sensitivity, high sensitivity, conflict with authority figures. This comes up in a lot of the aspects, a lot of the placements, intense conflict with authority figures. Also, Canadians waking up. We've kind of heard that term if you're in the spiritual community, holistic community, waking up, and Canadians taking the red pill. So that's another expression kind of used in the spiritual, holistic truther community. And it comes from the movie The Matrix, when Neo has the choice of taking the red pill, where he really finds out the truth about reality and letting go of his past limiting beliefs, or taking the blue pill, which is just continuing to live life in the matrix, not seeing the truth. So a big chart theme is Canadians waking up and, as I'm saying, taking the red pill. And also, it's a year of really big, major transformation and changes. So I mentioned before that the big three placements of the chart, we've got the sun in Cancer, 8 degrees in the 12th house, the moon in Pisces, 22 degrees in the 9th house, and the ascendant in Cancer, 19 degrees. So, okay, talked a little bit about the sun in the 12th house, but I'll say some more. This is really challenging in of itself. You guys are going to hear me just say over and over again all these challenging things in the chart, and I think it really showed in the past year. When we have the sun in particular, our most important placement, our life force, our identity, who we truly are, in the 12th house of behind the scenes and isolation. I mean, we've seen that in Canada the past year. People have felt very, very isolated overall. People have felt very, very sensitive and almost like they can't deal with what's going on. I've noticed that with a lot of Canadians, and at times myself, like it's just hard to even deal with everything that's going on. And it feels more comfortable to just retreat. Sun in the 12th house is retreat, isolation, disconnecting from what's going on outside the house and just staying in isolation. Sun in 12th house can be forced isolation, which that has happened the past year, and also isolation that we choose because we just don't want to deal with what's going on. So it's actually been both facets of that sun in the 12th house of isolation. As I said, really, really extremely sensitive, that our sun is in Cancer, water sign, in the 12th house of Pisces, also water sign. And if you guys watched the part 1 of this video series, you'll remember when I talked about the 12th house stellium, it can be a lot about illusions. And with our sun being in the 12th house, it's like us living in literally a world of illusions. And that's just the way it is because we're too sensitive to do anything about it. But we're going to see with some other things in the chart how there's this interesting parallel of some placements that are like the most sensitive, empathic placements you can have, with a few things that are very, very powerful and showed us stepping into our power, starting to step into our power with, in particular, the truckers' freedom protests that happen, which we'll get into. But this sun in the 12th house is one of those things that just really highly sensitive, isolation, self-imposed and forced, also victimhood. It's also a bit depressive. It's not the happiest place to have your sun. And with sun in the 12th house, sometimes the things that can make us feel happy are like really big illusions. You know, this could be a lot of people turning to alcohol, drugs, just made up beliefs, made up things to try to get through this year that we've been in. So that's a bit on the sun in the 12th house. The moon, so the moon is our emotional nature, our innermost feelings. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about sensitivity. The moon rules our sensitivity. And the moon in the solar return chart is in the 9th house of Sagittarius. and the moon is in the sign of Pisces. So this I've really noticed with friends and clients looking at their chart. Moon in Pisces is a very big challenge. So we've got already Sun in the 12th house, big challenge. Moon in Pisces, big challenge. It does have lots of beautiful things about it when someone or something has a moon in Pisces, because it's our inner nature. It's our inner feelings, our inner ideas, imagination, feelings. So the positive side of a moon in Pisces is it can be really loving and romantic and creative. But the negative side of it is, Pisces rules illusions. We've gone over that in the part 1 with the Pisces stellium. Illusions, high sensitivity, victimhood. And not only is the moon in Pisces, it's at 22 degrees, which is a little bit more advanced astrology when we look at the degrees, but I do like to look at it. 22 degrees is one of the 30 degrees that is a very challenging degree, usually. Really intense things can come up with a 22 degrees. Sometimes not so good things. So for me, interpreting this, looking at moon in Pisces 22 degrees, very hard, emotional year. Very, very emotional year. Very, Pisces also rules psychological disorders, a lot of mental disorders. So this is like people can feel like they're going crazy with their emotions. And we've seen that in the past year. I mean, the state of Canada has been scary. It's been sad. There's been grief, all of those, heavy emotions. I think most Canadians have felt them. Most of the Canadians I've talked to have felt those. So this is a hard place, and it makes Canadians and the energy of Canada really, really highly just sensitive. I can't emphasize that enough. We just don't want to deal with what's going on. It's just too much. That's moon in Pisces. It's just too much. I'm just going to go escape over here. And one of the things I think is really interesting about this 9th house, which I'll talk more about when we get to the 9th house stellium, is the moon, our emotional nature, our inner self, is conjunct Neptune. So you can't really see it in this chart picture I have here, but Neptune and the moon are on top of each other, conjunct. Neptune, ruler of Pisces, illusions, escapism, and they're sitting in the 9th house of Sagittarius, foreign places, traveling, also escapism a little bit. Sagittarius can also be escapism a little bit. So this is like a lot of Canadians don't want to deal with what's going on. And it's almost like, you know what, I'm just going to get out of here. Like, I'm done with Canada. I'm just going to go to Mexico. I'm just going to go to Costa Rica. And there's a lot of Canadians that have been doing that. And I'm not bashing you if you're one of the ones that have been doing that, because I totally understand it's very intense what's going on in Canada. But this shows up in our chart that we have this moon in Pisces, conjunct Neptune in Pisces in the 9th house. I'm just gonna get out of here. I don't want to deal with this. I've heard a lot of people say, I don't owe anything to this country. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to go somewhere else. Okay, that's interesting. I've heard a lot of people say that, and I wonder if they'll still feel that way when the energy starts to change, when we get into this new solar return year that I'm very, very excited for. And I promise it's going to get a lot better starting on June 30th, 2022. So yeah, that's a bit on our moon in Pisces. If you have a moon in Pisces, or you know anybody with a moon in Pisces, you guys know what I'm talking about. They're very, very sensitive to the point where they can't even deal with their sensitivity a lot of the time. And a lot of them go to drugs, a lot of them go to escapism. They just can't deal with it. They just got to go somewhere else, do something else, have some kind of distraction. That's the dark side of that. Okay, the ascendant of the chart, also known as the rising, so we use the words ascendant and rising interchangeably, is how we are seen, how we present ourselves out in the world. And it's a lot of our personality traits too. So the ascendant of Canada for the past solar return year has been in Cancer. I'm just going to stay at home and not deal with what's going on, and hopefully it fixes itself, but I'm just going to take care of my family and just be at home, and okay, there's another lockdown. Okay, I'm just going to do that. Hopefully it changes. That's the energy to me of sun, moon, and rising all in a water sign. It's just too sensitive. It just can't deal with what's going on. How can you deal with the intensity of what's going on and try to take some direct action to change when you are literally overwhelmed emotionally? And let me know if that resonates with you or not, but I feel like this has just been a year of an absolute emotional roller coaster. And our sun, moon, and rising show that. And our rising in Cancer, how we're showing up to the world, is just kind of taking care of ourselves, our family, not necessarily wanting to step into our confidence and our warrior to protect our country, which is going to change. That's going to really shift in the new solar return chart and start happening. That's our big three. And if you have any of these positions in your chart, I don't want to poo-poo you and say that they're, totally bad positions, but all of these combined together, this is very sensitive, emotional, and overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming. So yeah, the ascendant in Cancer is also a huge emphasis and importance for the year on the home and the family and the protection of the home and the family and feeling safe at home. Cancer rules home and family and our comforts. And it really affects a Cancer or a Cancer rising when they don't feel comfortable, which a lot of us have not felt comfortable. So yeah, you guys know what I mean. Just very challenging placements. The inner planetary placements. So the inner planets, we've got Mercury in the 12th house at home, at its home sign in Gemini. So Mercury likes to be in Gemini. Nice. We've got something in its home sign in a good placement. And it's at 18 degrees in a Virgo degree. Venus in Leo in the first house in 3 degrees, which is a Gemini degree. And Mars, the planet of our masculine energy, our aggression, our drive, our willpower, in Leo in the second house in 11 degrees, Aquarius degree. Very interesting. So I'm not going to get too much into these interplanetary placements because there's other stuff that I want to focus on, but I'll just give a little bit of a gist of these things. So Mercury is at its home sign in Gemini. Mercury is the planet that rules Gemini in astrology. So it loves to be there. But it's very interesting that it's in the 12th house. So things that are hidden, information, Mercury rules information and knowledge that's been hidden, coming to the surface. And I think I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. There's been so many cases of that the past year, with controversies with our prime minister, with our government, with the residential schools, all of these truths. Mercury can be truths, knowledge of truths coming out. 12th house, as I've mentioned before, things that are really deeply hidden, you know, like 100 feet underground, getting dug up and coming out. So it's nice to have Mercury in Gemini. It can be light and fun, even though this hasn't really been a light and fun year, but that's usually the energy of a Mercury in Gemini. But when you have it in 12th house, that changes the energy of it to hidden things coming up to the surface. And Mercury in Gemini is also about, because it's in its home sign, research. Geminis love to research. Mercury rules research. So a lot of us Canadians have finally come around to researching our country, keeping up to date with what's going on in the politics, research, information, being very turned on to that. So this is a positive part of the chart, that these things are starting to come out. Venus in Leo in the first house. Leo is the sign of, ruled by the sun, of generosity, of creativity, loves being in the spotlight, loves to have fun, very creative. In Venus in the first house, this can be a lot of Canadians starting to make new friends. When we have Venus in the first house, we attract like-minded friends that are actually really good for us. And this is another theme in the chart, is people's relationships that, like Canadians in particular, a lot of our friendships have changed, work relationships have changed, love relationships have changed based on what has been going on, and a lot of the division really of what's been going on. But you know, when we lose something in our life, when one door closes in a relationship, this Venus in the first house is like, I'm going to manifest, bring in some people that are more in alignment with you and your values. So it's kind of nice to have the Venus in the first house there. And Mars in Leo, a little bit intense in the second house. When we have Mars in the second house rules our material possessions and our values. The second house is ruled by Venus in the sign Taurus. So Mars being the aggressor, our masculine energy, and I mean, we've seen this. This is fights about values. And one of the main aspects of the chart is Mars is, directly opposite Saturn. There's a Mars-Saturn direct opposition, two of the three malefic planets. So I mentioned in the part 1 of this video series that the malefic planets are not benefic. Some people call them like the evil planets, but they're not really evil. They're just the ones that are challenging. They challenge us. They have a little bit of a heavier energy, well, a lot of a more heavier energy. And Mars and Saturn are two of those planets. Pluto is the other one that's sitting in the 7th house of this chart. So Mars and Saturn directly opposite each other. We'll get into that. But Mars just being in the 2nd house in Leo, in passionate Leo, this is blowouts and fights of values with the people in our lives. And I don't know if I can think of anyone that maybe hasn't had some sort of argument, intense argument or disagreement with someone in their lives. that's from Canada in the past year. I think we've all gone through that, very much so. Okay, so we're going to look at the outer planets more in depth because yeah, there's a lot going on with those that I think are quite fascinating. So I mentioned that Jupiter is in the exact same sign for this solar return year that it was in the birth chart of Canada. So this little picture on the bottom left is Jupiter in the 12th house in the birth chart of Canada. And then at the bottom right is the solar return chart. Oh, actually, that is not. Oh, it is. This is when Jupiter goes 7 degrees Pisces. So in the birth chart of Canada, Jupiter is at 7 degrees Pisces. So on January 31st, this is something that totally tripped me out when I was studying the solar return chart. January 31st, 2022 was when Canada had its 13th exact Jupiter return. So Jupiter returns every 12 years to the same place as it was in a birth chart. So like how we're looking at this solar return chart right now, that's based off of every 365 days, the sun coming back into the same position as in our birth chart. That's the solar cycle, the solar return. So the Jupiter return takes 12 years to come back into that exact same degree position. So we'll get into what happened January 31st. I don't think I even have to say, I think a lot of you will know, but we'll get into that. So in the solar return chart, Jupiter is in Pisces. It goes into exactly 7 degrees on January 31st, 2022. And in the chart, let me just bring this up here. Jupiter is in the 9th house. So it's a part of the 9th house stellium with the moon and Neptune. Jupiter in Pisces, and Jupiter was retrograde on this solar return chart. So this is positive. It is very, very positive because Jupiter is back. It's a Jupiter return. And what's interesting about Canada's Jupiter is that Jupiter is in its traditional ruler, ancient ruler home sign. So the ancient home sign of Jupiter is Pisces, and the modern home sign of Jupiter is Sagittarius. So Jupiter likes to be in Pisces, and we have that in our birth chart, and we have that in the solar return chart. Jupiter is the planet of optimism, expansion. It rules all of those Sagittarius things, everything that Sagittarius is. Optimism, expansion, travel, abundance, prosperity, luck, knowledge, and beliefs. So whenever Jupiter comes back, when we have a Jupiter return, it is a reinvention, rebirth, re-looking at our beliefs. And it's also a lucky time because Jupiter is the luckiest planet, and everyone who's into astrology knows, or if you're an astrologer yourself, everybody loves Jupiter. And when someone has their Jupiter return, they're very happy about it. So even though in this solar return chart, there's very challenging things going on, we've got this lucky Jupiter return. Even though it's retrograde, it's still a lucky time to have your Jupiter return. So it is a looking at what are our beliefs. It brings in luck, lucky opportunities, lucky happenings, which guess what, you guys? The day January 31st, 2022, which is the exact day Jupiter went back into 7 7 degrees Pisces, as in Canada's birth chart, was the third day of the Freedom Convoy, the peaceful truckers' protest in Ottawa. So what are the chances of that? That every 12 years we have our lucky Jupiter return. And on the exact day we have the Jupiter return, even though it's not retrograde. So in the birth chart of Canada, it was retrograde and here it's not. It's still the return. It's still 7 degrees, Jupiter 7 degrees in Pisces. So we have the third day of the truckers' protest, which for many, 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 many Canadians, that was a very positive occurrence, a very hopeful event that brought a lot of us hope and optimism again about our country, about our fellow Canadians, about our pride of the country. It brought luckiness. Like, does that make sense when I say that? It brought optimism. It brought that Jupiter energy. And also, it made us look at our beliefs of what our country was. I looked at what Justin Trudeau's tweets were for this exact day, because I knew that this was when the third day of the truckers' peaceful protest. And this really blew my mind. So on January 31st, 2022, Justin Trudeau tweeted, "I know this pandemic is frustrating. It's frustrating that after 2 years, we're not done fighting COVID-19. But over the past few days, Canadians have been shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital." So here we have our favorite person. I'm being funny when I say that, Justin Trudeau, on this day where many, many Canadians are coming together. This peaceful protest is just in the start. It's just in its third day in Ottawa. Canadians are feeling empowered for the first time in forever. Justin puts out this tweet and this statement, which is about beliefs. Jupiter return, our leader of the country. Canadians have been shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. And that was so, I think it's safe to say, most Canadians, so obviously a lie. It's like our Jupiter return showing us, okay, this person does not have the highest and best beliefs, projections for the country. The truckers' peaceful protest, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that. But one of the things to that is it really showed us who Justin Trudeau actually is and who he actually works for. The World Economic Forum, all that stuff we know about. On a day that, in my humble opinion, all Canadians should be celebrating, the men and women of our country going to Ottawa in the middle of winter, January 31st, 2022, doing this fun, peaceful, optimistic protest. And our leader, very much in charge of holding our beliefs and being a way shower of Canadian beliefs, bearer of our beliefs, saying that it is shocking and frankly disgusting behavior. And he's saying by some of the people because they staged fake people with the what was it, the Confederation flag and all that stuff. They staged that stuff. Those were people that worked for Justin Trudeau, and they were the only ones wearing complete face masks, hiding their faces. I mean, it was all just, they were trying to make the protests look bad. But anyways, that's what he has to say about it. It's like, this guy doesn't have our best interest, and who he's working for does not have our best interest. Exact Jupiter return. And also, Justin Trudeau tweeted that day, "This morning I tested positive for COVID-19. I'm feeling fine and I'll continue to work remotely this week while following public health guidelines. Everyone, please get vaccinated and get boosted." Beliefs, programs, almost every single tweet this guy puts out at the end, "Everyone, please get vaccinated and get boosted." So, you know, in my opinion, I don't think this guy actually had COVID-19. I think that he was scared of being a true leader of the people and going and talking to the truckers and the people, and just wanted to hide. Sun in the 12th house. This also applies to Justin, you guys, the chart of Canada. Our leader went to hide at a moment where, why wouldn't you go talk to the truckers? Why wouldn't you go try to talk with the people? Even if you think they're completely crazy, unvaccinated people, completely crazy, why wouldn't you give them the respect as our leader to just go talk to them? No, he went into hiding. He went into isolation. Sun in the 12th house. So I think this is so cool that we've had this Jupiter return the past year, and that January 31st, 2022 was the exact date. And once again, if you're a Canadian, I know I got into my Mars in the second house experience. Woo, I had some really big disagreements and stuff with people, and I don't enjoy doing that at all. I really don't enjoy doing that at all. But for the most part, my fellow Canadians, like myself, were very, very happy and renewed with hope and optimism and pride and empowerment by this Freedom Convoy truckers protest. So it was a Jupiter return blessing, in my opinion. And I just wrote down here in the notes, it was renewed positivity, hope, and optimism for many Canadians. Jupiter is in the 9th house of the solar return chart. So we've had the Jupiter returning into Pisces 7 degrees, but Jupiter is sitting in the 9th house. So I'll just show you guys a picture here. Once again, Jupiter sitting in the 9th house. And so Jupiter is our beliefs, right? Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Jupiter and Sagittarius are all about philosophy and higher knowledge and what is the truth and the meaning of life and the search for truth. So I wrote here, many Canadians take a major red pill and wake up. This past year, so in 2020, I was one of the Canadians that went out to some of the first freedom protests in Toronto and different places. And there was only a few hundred of us at that. And we had all taken the red pill. We were some of the ones that took the red pill first. And I'm not saying I'm better than anyone by any means, because it's just, I think at our core of who we truly are is red pill, is an awakened soul having a human experience. But we come into this earth life, particularly at this time, where we forget everything and we have our human experience, and we're in the blue pill. Age of Pisces, the past 2,000 years, which is, I'm going to make a whole separate other video of that. That's the cosmic cycle we've been in, the age of Pisces. And we're stepping into the age of Aquarius, which is all total red pill, pretty much. And when I say red pill, this term comes from the Matrix movie. So this is a picture of Morpheus from the Matrix, where he's offering Neo the blue pill or the red pill. So the blue pill As Morpheus says in The Matrix, the story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. And the red pill he offers Neo, you stay in Wonderland and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And this has been Jupiter in the 9th house. This is a red pill, whether you like it or not, for Canadians. It has been so shown in our face what's the best way for me to say this? The powers that be, who they really are and what their intentions really are. That it's not all unicorns and fairy dust, you know, how I talked about in the previous part 1 video, how we thought Canada was perfect. We've been given this red pill of Canada's not been perfect. This is a country built on literally a lot of pain and lies. And at the current time, our prime minister does not work for the people. A lot of our government does not work for the people. This is, in many ways, a serious situation. It is not the blue pill this is the best country in the world. Remember when I was talking about the Pisces stellium in part 1 of this video series? That's the blue pill. We're in full red pill. And I think that this Jupiter in the 9th house is what this is. A lot of truths coming out, like how the Mercury is in the 12th house, all these things coming out. And now we're going to go deeper into this. Let me ask you guys if this is mean. The bank accounts of Freedom Convoy donors in Canada got frozen. Now, I don't know if this little picture is correct. It's saying 76 bank accounts were frozen. I don't know exactly how many were frozen, but many people that supported the peaceful protest of the Freedom Convoy had their bank accounts frozen for donating to the truckers, for donating to the peaceful protest. Just regular Canadians. And there was even one woman's bank account was frozen for buying a Freedom Convoy t-shirt. She couldn't access any of her money and she couldn't pay for food to pay for her kids. So is this a government that's loving? This is why I'm saying some Canadians are in denial. I think a lot of Canadians have taken the red pill and, you know, it was like we were forced a red pill because it's not always comfortable to face the truth of what's going on. Saturn in the 8th house. This is why I'm bringing up this bank accounts of the Freedom Convoy getting frozen. The 8th house in astrology rules our shared finances, our relationships with where we get money from, our banks, our accountants, the people that, it's not the 2nd house. The 2nd house is our values around money and how we love to make our own money. The 8th house is inheritance and, you know, banks, financial support. And whenever we have Saturn in the 8th house, and here it's retrograde, Saturn in the 8th house is you could lose money or someone can take money away from you, steal money, withhold money. And when I saw this, the first thing I thought of was how Canada, to the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Canada is the first Western nation that froze bank accounts of people that supported the Freedom Convoy peaceful protest. So this 9th house stellium, like it's time to take the red pill and look at what's going on. This is not a loving government. And Saturn in the 8th house is directly opposite. Let me show you guys. Mars in the 2nd house. Mars opposite Saturn is like issues with authority figures. And a lot of the aspects in this chart show issues with authority figures. People couldn't access their money. I mean, that's not a loving government at all. Inez says, however, the relative ease with which the bank accounts were frozen showed the world what governments are up to, their corruptions. We still don't know how many people have moved their money out of banks. Totally correct, Inez. Totally correct. And thank you for saying that. This is not a stable placement. And Saturn in Aquarius is like not the most stable place to have Saturn in, because Aquarius rules rebelliousness, weirdness, freedom. So it's like an attack on our financial freedom. Very, very intense what happened in Canada. And personally, as a Canadian, I think so much has happened in the past year, like how we have all this stuff. We're like a triple water sign, sun, moon, and rising. We've got all this really sensitive stuff. It's like a person can only handle so much. You know what I mean? And I totally understand that. Like our country and the whole world has been collectively traumatized in the past 2 years. But this is one of those things that this really needs to get addressed at some point. Like, I don't think this has really been come up like for healing yet. People could not access their money. And like Inez said, when this happened, a lot of people did start freaked out and started taking their money out of Canada, different banks, you know, all kinds of stuff. That's not a free country to have the government, you know, get the banks to do that. That's really, we need to take the red pill, and well, we are taking the red pill and seeing that that's what's going on. Really crazy stuff. Those people all need to be held accountable that did that. That's what needs to happen. Okay, so Uranus, if this is not intense enough for you guys, like this is just so crazy, this chart, honestly, I'm not exaggerating at all. This is like a really, really intense and challenging chart. So if that's not too much for you guys already, Uranus, the planet of surprises, shocks, unpredictability, weirdness. So Uranus rules Aquarius. It's the weird planet, the rebel. Uranus is in Taurus, which I think Uranus is in Taurus for an 8-year period around that. And Uranus is going to be in Taurus until 2025, 2026. And this is a very unstable energy. So not just for this Canada solar return chart, this is for the whole world. Uranus is in Taurus until 2025, 2026. The planet of unpredictability, really not stability, is in one of the most stable signs of Taurus. Taurus rules food. It rules our material comforts. Everything that is Taurus, Uranus in Taurus. So we're seeing on the world stage food shortages play out. So I am telling people, you know, this is a good time, side note, just to have extra food on hand with this Uranus and Taurus. Really unpredictability with our food supply and our comforts, you know, our creature comforts, Taurus. So in the solar return chart, Uranus in Taurus, 13 degrees, Aries degree, warrior degree, confidence degree, in the 11th house. So our 11th house is the house of groups of people in astrology, groups of people, like-minded people, teams. And what am I bringing up again? The trucker protest. Because how shocking was that? Uranus, planet of shocks and independence and freedom. Uranus is a really interesting planet, all the things that it rules. We had it in the 11th house, 13 degrees Aries degree. So what happened with Canada? Trucker protest. I mean, like Uranus is weird things, and Aquariuses can be kind of like weirdos a little bit, or if you have something in Aquarius, there's something weird, cool. It also rules cool, being cool. In the 11th house, so we shocked the world. We shocked ourselves and we shocked the world with a trucker peaceful protest with, look at this picture, Canadians in the middle of the winter on the highways, byways, overpasses. How weird and cool was that? Uranus in the 11th house. So once again, we've got some of these things that are really like empowering, like this Uranus in Aries degree in the 11th house. Then we've got this, juxtaposition of the really, really sensitive parts of the chart. There's like both of those themes going on. Uranus in the 11th house is also really unlikely friendships, unlikely people coming together, and a lot of people thought truckers weren't cool. I think, there's been this thing like, oh, truckers are just truckers and they're not cool, but the truckers became the coolest people in Canada this past year. Okay, let's look at Neptune, another one of the planets retrograde in Pisces, in its home sign of Pisces. So Jupiter is the ancient ruler of Pisces, and Neptune is the modern day ruler of Pisces. So in the solar return chart, Neptune is retrograde in Pisces, 23 degrees Aquarius degree in the 9th house. So this is special because Neptune is the planet of mysticism and the outer realms, very magical energy. And in the 9th house, ruled by Sagittarius, of higher knowledge, higher wisdom. So this, when I look at this Neptune in the 9th house, this is really about, to me, knowing instead of believing. So this past year has been a really interesting initiation, I think, of Canada stepping into knowing rather than just believing something because we've been told it or we've read it in a book. It's like real higher understanding, knowing. The Neptune is conjunct the moon, which we'll look at when we get into the aspects. But one of the positive things of this very challenging year is this Neptune in Pisces, that what do challenges give us in life? They give us wisdom. The 9th house rules wisdom. Neptune rules mystical, spiritual wisdom. So it's knowing instead of just believing something. Knowing, we're literally going through the process of knowing, okay, this is like a really dark time. There's a lot of really messed up things that have happened in the country last year, but knowing that everything is a cycle, and this is just one of the things I'm using as an example. Everything is just a cycle, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, that's what I mean, knowing instead of believing. That's something that we could have believed before the experience of this past year, And I know a lot of people have had very challenging times in their life, and they've probably come to that knowing before this past year with Canada. But I think, to be honest with you guys, I think this past year for a lot of Canadians has been the hardest year of their life. People losing jobs for being unvaccinated, people having their bank accounts frozen, relationships, Mars in the second house, people fighting with each other, people not wanting to see each other, all of this chaos and division, you know, and challenge. But there is wisdom that comes through this experience. Does that make sense what I'm saying, you guys? That's what I see from this Neptune in Pisces. And it's right on the midheaven. So this arrow is like right the top of the chart. So it's a very significant placement. And side note, I pulled a card. I pulled an oracle card before starting this live video. And guess what card I got? Neptune from my Ascension cards by Diana Cooper, which I don't normally use this deck that much. This is a total side note. This is my ADD acting up a little bit, but I pulled Neptune right before I started this video. And I feel like this is really, really important. Canadians are gaining wisdom through this hard experience, real knowledge, not just believing something because a book said it. Like, you know, one of Canadians' Pisces stellium beliefs that I talked about in the part 1, we're the freest country in the world. It's like Neptune in the 9th house, right on the midheaven, right at the top of the chart going, you know what? This is the truth of the country. 9th house, red pill. It's not what you thought it is. The country's now going through a death and rebirth process, but it's going to be okay because everything is a cycle. I feel like I'm talking as Neptune, like this is Neptune speaking through me right now. It may sound silly, but it's like the spiritual wisdom of spiritual belief that everything is a cycle, nothing lasts forever. You're in this initiation, dark night of the soul part, but the light will come. Does that make sense, you guys? So knowing instead of believing and being connected to spiritual practice. Like people can find solace when we're going through a very dramatic, hard time. That's when it's very natural to want to lean on spirituality, even if a person isn't necessarily spirituality. Spirituality is what will really save you if you're completely lost and you don't have the spiritual connection. Remembering those higher Neptunian and 9th house truths of life. Okay. Now we're going to go to Pluto in Capricorn in the 7th house. And I promise this is the only time I think I have our friend Justin Trudeau Castro, a picture of him here. I think there's one more picture of him here in another slide. But here we go. So Pluto in the solar return chart is retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, in the 7th house, 25 degrees, Aries degrees. So what is Pluto? Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. Pluto is one of the 3 malefic planets. Pluto rules death, transformation, darkness, the dark side, intensity, all of the most intense, the occult, the dark arts, all of the most, just intense aspects of life, as I like to say. Retrograde in Capricorn. So this has been a theme of the past few years, this Pluto, or not few years, many years, Pluto being in Capricorn, the destruction, Pluto, destruction, of the systems, of the establishment, of the governments, Capricorn. And isn't it interesting that our friend Justin is a Capricorn? So Pluto is in the 7th house of Canada's solar return chart. Our 7th house is our relationships. A lot of the time it's our love relationships, but it can also be other kind of relationships in our lives, like our relationships with people that work for us or do some sort of work for us relationships. The 3rd house of Gemini and the 11th house of Aquarius are more to do with friendships. 10th house is work relationship. The 7th house is more love relationships and people that do types of work for us. So like our dentist or our lawyer or our politician, stuff like that. But when we have Pluto in the 7th house, this is open, hidden enemies at play. So people who have Pluto in the 7th house, I actually have my Pluto in the 7th house. So people who have that, for example, in your birth chart, you need to be mindful of people like just open enemies, hidden enemies, or stalking, kind of freaky, creepy relationships. But in the chart of Canada, this has a lot to do with Justin, because he is our current leader. Pluto in Capricorn governments, leaders. Pluto rules power. And with Pluto in the 7th house, this can be really, really nasty bullying, which he has done big time, in particular to unvaccinated Canadians, not just unvaccinated Canadians, but very much just like, it makes me feel like, a stab, like we've been stabbed in a way, and he just keeps digging it in every time he talks, just keeps stabbing deeper and deeper. That's this Pluto in the 7th house. And also, Chrystia Freeland, I'm just going to say it, and Jagmeet Singh, I'm just going to say it, and all these people, it's like, oh my God, they do not have our highest and best interests. And in the part 4 of this video series, I'm going to look into their charts and show you why I'm saying that, because I'm not just saying that for no reason. Like, yeah. But this shows here people that can be mean, authority figures being mean. Mean. And we've been dealing with that. I mean, this guy has called Canadians, what has he called us? Racist, misogynist, disgraceful, freedom-loving Canadians, all kinds of stuff. So this is one of the not so fun, Pluto in the 7th house, not so fun things in the chart, but the Pluto is sextile the midheaven, which is nice. So that's saying overall positive transformation. But yeah, we've got some yuckies. We've got some yuckies in the government of Canada right now. And it's also, like I said, dark arts, excuse me, dark arts and the occult at play, hidden enemies. And who has said, I should have put a picture of Klaus Schwab here, but who has said that he's basically in control of Canada right now through his young global leader, Justin Trudeau? If you know the right answer, I'm sending you a virtual hug. Klaus Schwab, another open/hidden enemy of Canada, very much at play, who is controlling this guy. Crazy stuff. So one of the positive things, another positive thing in the chart is Chiron in Aries in the 10th house. And this was very much shown and came up with the truckers protest. So Chiron is the asteroid that is the wounded healer. And Chiron is a very, very important part of our chart to be aware of. It's the Chiron and our moon are the most sensitive places of our chart, in my opinion. Chiron shows our greatest wound. And when we acknowledge that wound and work with it and heal, it can become our superpower. So in the solar return chart, our Chiron is in Aries, warrior, bravery, confidence, protector. And we stepped into that. Canada inspired the world. I put here, Canada inspired the world. We really did, with the truckers protests and everybody that supported the truckers protests. And I can speak from my experience as a Canadian that I'm in Belgium right now, and I've been here for the past year and a half. Everybody here knew about what was going on in Canada. And a lot of them were saying to me, this is so cool. It's so cool what's going on. You guys are inspiring the world. How many times I heard that? And I'm all the way over here in Belgium. So this Chiron in Aries is us. Yeah, we're wounded healer Chirons. Yes, we are a wounded country, Canada, right now, but we're going to step into that protective warrior of our country, Chiron, right on the midheaven, right on the top of the chart, in the 10th house of public life. And we're going to show the world that yes, we're wounded. Yes, we're hurt. Yes, this is like really traumatizing and sensitive right now, but it's the middle of winter and we're going to do this crazy Uranus and Taurus 11th house truckers protest. And we're going to do this for us and we're going to do this for the world. I think it's so cool that the Chiron is in Aries in the 10th house in this chart. Very, very cool. Okay, another picture of the truckers protest. Don't you guys love all the pictures looking back at it? The North Node in Gemini. So the North Node is not a planet, but it's a calculation of the moon's nodes. That it's kind of advanced astrology, but it shows us a lot of our destiny and our life purpose. The North Node was in the 11th house for the solar return year. Groups of people, Gemini, local community, 11th house groups of people, 10th degree Capricorn, getting things done. We stepped into our destiny. All of you guys, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you guys that went out, all the truckers, all the supporters, everybody. I mean, that was huge. That was Canada really stepping into our self-empowerment, even at such a vulnerable, sensitive time. You guys did it anyways. So I'm really, really proud of you guys and just want to say thank you. You inspired us, but also the whole world. And it's about unity, North Node. Our destiny is that it's time to come together. It's time to come together in unity and fairness. So even though we've got this challenging stuff, there is some good stuff too. So I talked a little bit about the 9th house stellium. So once again, a stellium when we have 3 or more planets in the same sign or house. So we have this 9th house stellium. So really big emphasis on, like I said, Canada taking a red pill, waking up, stepping into the real truths and knowledge of the country, of our experiences at this time with the country. And the 9th house is also foreign places. So like I said, a lot of Canadians have wanted to escape and go somewhere else. But also on the world stage, 9th house, Sagittarius, foreign places, a lot of attention is on Canada on the world stage. I don't know if you guys have seen, but because I'm in Europe right now, I've seen a lot of it. The European Parliament is really taking seriously what's going on in Canada. And they're saying, like, there's this amazing MP in the European Parliament called Christine something. She's from Germany. I forget her last name. And she along with many other European Parliament members, keep bringing up what's going on with Canada, with Justin Trudeau. It's not right. They're trying to stand up for themselves with this trucker protest and all this other stuff going on. So our allies from foreign countries, our friends, have their eyes on us, and they're there to support us, and we're there to support them too. We gave a lot of optimism and hope through the truckers protest to the globalist tyranny going on, and they've also got our back. And I think that has a lot to do with this 9th house stellium. It's also luck, as I've said, the 9th house. So even though we're in this past year that seemed really dark, there's a reason for it. Thank you, Inez. Yeah, Inez just said in the chat, Christine Anderson. She's brilliant, brilliant European Parliament member. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the aspects of the chart. And there's a lot of aspects to the chart, but I like to just focus on the main strongest aspects. So 3 of the top 4 strongest aspects of this past solar return chart involve, as I like to call him, Granddaddy Saturn. This is quite abnormal. I'm not just saying this, you guys. This is quite abnormal. 3 of the top 4 strongest aspects involve, I like to call it, Granddaddy Saturn. Saturn. We've got Saturn sextile Chiron, exact aspect. Saturn square Uranus, and Mars opposite Saturn. So this almost makes me feel like, if you guys have ever heard the term a Saturn return, it makes me feel like that. And Canada is not having a Saturn return right now. It's not a Saturn return, but it kind of feels like that, because this is really heavy Saturn aspects. To have 3 of the top 4 strongest aspects involving Saturn, and 2 of them are adversive aspects. So that means challenging aspects. The number 1 exact aspect is a sextile, so that's a nice one. But then there's 2 adverse, challenging ones. So let's look at these. So the main strongest aspect of the chart is Saturn here in the 8th house is sextile Chiron over in the 10th house. So this is a positive energy flow. This is a positive relationship, but we're talking about Saturn here and Chiron, which are not Jupiter and Venus in sextile. They're not 2 of the malefics. It's, benefics. It's a malefic Saturn with Chiron, the wounded healer asteroid. So it is a positive energy flow relationship aspect, but we're talking about 2 really intense, one really intense planet and one really intense asteroid. Saturn is the planet, Granddaddy Saturn, rules responsibilities and discipline and the systems and the structures and the traditions, you know, and did you get that done? And did you do it the right way? And how successful were you at it? That's Saturn. And Chiron, our greatest wound, sextile each other. So this is wounds coming up. Saturn is bringing those wounds up to be addressed that don't really feel good, past traumas, but they have to come up because the systems has to change. Saturn sextile Chiron. Saturn is saying it's time for this country to change. And what do we have to do to change? Address the trauma. What is that trauma? I talked about that a lot in the part 1 of this video series. about the roots of our country, about, the hidden government things going on. There's a lot of wounds and trauma. So it's coming up, and it's stuff that we'd rather not deal with it. We'd rather just be, enjoying life, this 9th house stellium. We'd rather go on a trip and then come back to Canada and say that we, live in the best country in the world. But Saturn sextile Chiron is saying, no, it's time to face what's going on and change the system. And that is going to happen, whether you like it or not. That's Saturn saying that. So it's the integration of our needs, of new tradition and new stability and new systems. So it is positive, but it's also a challenging one. Like, this chart is so weird how much challenging stuff is going on. And as I've said, it's been a very emotional year for Canadians, and Chiron, it's our most sensitive spot in aspect to Saturn. So another one of the Saturn aspects, Saturn here in the 8th house square Uranus in the 11th. So a square is an adverse aspect. It's a not so easy aspect. And Saturn square Uranus is notorious for issues, conflict, literal fights, and violence with authority. And it's a very strong aspect in the solar return chart. And I put this picture here that I think this will go down in history as one of the worst moments in Canadian history with the Canadian people, when these guys, who even were these guys, maybe some of you guys know that are listening live, because these guys that came into Ottawa to remove the peaceful trucker protest that was just literally families on bouncy castles, drinking Tim Hortons coffee, dancing to music, just peacefully asking, can we have our rights back? Can we have fairness back? Can we get our jobs back? The Canadian government, Mary says Quebec military. Thank you, Mary. The Canadian government called in these guys, who I've heard from some sources that these were people from completely different countries. They weren't actually Canadians, this people. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've heard. And look at what they're wearing. If you look at what they're wearing, they had no name badges, no nothing, just these green suits, come in and got violent with the protesters. Saturn square Uranus. Saturn are authorities squaring Uranus, the need for freedom and rebelliousness, but it's not a violent rebelliousness, this Uranus. It was Uranus in the 11th house, just people coming together for freedom. But Saturn didn't like that. The authority didn't like that. Not that Saturn didn't like that. The authorities did not like that, and squared it and ended it violently. And this may be the picture of, there's a First Nations grandmother that was trampled by a horse, along with many other people that got wounded. And this is just one thing. If you think about Canada the past year, this is just one thing that was highly televised. But think about all the situations where Canadians stepping into their Uranus, right? Their need for freedom, their freedom loving, their rebelliousness, independence, was squared by the authority, Saturn. You have to wear the mask or else you can't come into the store. You have to wear the mask or else you're killing people. You're selfish. you have to get vaccinated or else you can't come to work. That's that Saturn, heavy negative side of Saturn, control, negative system control. And we've seen this whole past year, but this was like a climax moment at the truckers' protest and it was actually disgraceful when all those people were removed. Mary says, people being charged for being in a park. Correct. It's like our independence was not allowed. And we showed up to Ottawa, Chiron and Aries, in the public, but overall, with all this water, our sun, our moon, our rising and water, and all this other challenging aspects, it's not this year that the people win. It's going to come up in the coming years, though. I promise you guys that. This is the hardest year. This year that we've just had. Totally. So the last really main Saturn aspect, Mars opposite Saturn. And I just put this little picture. This is just an example of one of the peaceful protest assemblies, coming together for Trudeau to get removed. Trudeau's cabinet has been penetrated by the World Economic Forum, questionable conflicts of interest, benefiting financially from pandemic restrictions and sales of vaccines, literally. I mean, how crazy is that? Disregards basic human rights and is an embarrassment on the global stage. And this is from the Line Canada, a great organization that organized a lot of the first freedom protests in Toronto and other places. So this Mars opposite Saturn is like fighting with the authority, but it's very manic, Mars opposite Saturn, because this is an adverse effect. So it's not a positive energy flow. It's not an easy energy flow, an opposition. So it's Mars and Saturn opposing each other. It's like a fight. And in this position, Mars, our planet of our masculine energy, our drive, our willpower, our confidence, our aggression. When we have Mars opposite Saturn, it's like one moment, yeah, we're doing this truckers protest. Yeah, we're taking Canada back. But then the next moment, it can be totally depressive, feeling totally self-defeated. That's Mars opposite Saturn. It's like Saturn, the authorities in the 8th house, dark arts, occult, they're like winning at the moment. This is just this past year. I promise you, it's not going to be happening moving forward, but it's that moment where it feels like, just kind of giving up, that they've won and I don't have the energy for it anymore. Like, what do we do? Just being in that space where it's like, what do we do? I don't have the energy. I don't feel like fighting. I don't feel like standing up to this fight. So some really, like I said, heavy Saturn aspects, and this is not normal. When we look next week at the part 3 of this video series of the Astrology of Canada, you'll see the new solar return chart. There's not all this heavy Saturn stuff going on. There's not all this really heavy, intense things going on. It's a totally different energy. So thank the universe for that. Okay, the second last main aspect I wanted to bring up is the moon conjunct Neptune. So how I mentioned earlier, the moon and Neptune are almost right on top of each other in the sky. So in the sky on June 30th, 2021, the moon and Neptune were right on top of each other pretty much from the Earth's perspective. So that's what we call a conjunction, when two things are right on top of each other. In the 9th house, so I was being a little bit funny. I put this Air Canada airplane because how many people do you know that have just like fled Canada? Moon conjunct Neptune. They're like, you know what? This doesn't feel good for me anymore. I'm just going to go to Mexico, even though I don't know anything about Mexico, even though I'm not a Mexican, or Costa Rica. I'm just going to leave. I can't handle this. Moon sensitivity, Neptune, ruler of Pisces, sensitivity in the 9th house of foreign places. I'm just going to get out of here. The past year in Canada has been, I believe, pretty sure I've looked into this and seen this, the highest record of Canadians leaving Canada to go live somewhere else. Like, people are freaked out and can't handle it emotionally. And I understand you got to do what you got to do. I'm not bashing anybody. Do whatever you want to do. Like, I'm not saying it's bad to leave Canada, but it's just funny how many people, it shows in the chart. It's like people are not comfortable. And rightly so. Like, I'm here in Belgium and it's a lot more open than Canada. And I haven't been in Canada for the past year and a half. And I would probably want to leave too. I totally understand. It's crazy. The moon conjunct Neptune is also about victimhood and feeling overly sensitive and weak boundaries and absorbing people's feelings. And it's just too much. And having to find some sort of escape or escapism. And it's also moon conjunct Neptune, yearning for home, because the moon rules home, the sign of Cancer, yearning for, oh, I just wish, I just wish it was Canada 2019. That yearning, which I think a lot of us have felt. Okay, the last major aspect in the chart of Canada, that's one of the strongest aspects, is Pluto sextile the midheaven. So I mentioned that before. So, okay, really heavy year, really challenging year, but this is a country that is going to be a phoenix rising out of the ashes in the very near future. And this aspect shows us that. The transformation, as wild as it is, as scary as it is happening for a higher purpose. It's happening for the betterment of the country, for the transformation of the country. And I think that's very important for us to keep aware of at this time, that it's happening for a reason, and that those spiritual higher beliefs, the 9th house, the spiritual high beliefs, if what is happening with Canada wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't be happening. So it's happening for a reason. It's happening for transformation. Pluto sextile the midheaven. And the midheaven, once again, is the top middle part of our chart, the noon position, brightest sun spot of the day, with Pluto in positive energy flow, transformation. But not easy transformation, but we're going to get through it. So Canada is like a phoenix being born in the fire right now. And in the coming years, it's going to fly out of the ashes. So just a little recap of the Freedom Convoy truckers' peaceful protest, the things in the astrology that show us how that transpired. It happened in Aquarius season, the sign of freedom and independence, protests, rebelliousness. It happened exactly during Canada's 13th Jupiter return. How cool is that? 7 degrees Pisces, January 31st exact date. Saturn square Uranus, that tension between the freedom-loving people and the authority. Uranus in the 11th house, Chiron in the 10th house, and the North Node in the 11th house. Okay, so just a little bit of a recap here. As I've said over and over again, this is a very tough chart, very tough solar return year. I promise the next one is going to be better. We're going to get into that next week, and I'm excited to share that with you. But I think it's important for us to review. It's very important for us to review so we can learn from reviewing and not forget the history and not forget the happenings. And we have that learning, that Neptune in the 9th house, Jupiter in the 9th house, the knowing from the experience, and really integrate that knowing so that we don't let certain, I'll just say, atrocities, traumas happen again, right? And what is this teaching us? That is something that I like to say when personally I'm in a challenging time. I believe that higher spiritual teaching, that every experience is a teaching. It's teaching us something. So what is this past year teaching us? It's teaching us to, I think, step into our power and not be afraid of the authorities, and that everything happens for a reason. And it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't supposed to. Inez says, just imagine the cosmic muscles we're developing as a nation. Yes, that's beautiful. The cosmic muscles we're developing as a nation. That's beautiful, Inez. Thank you. It's so true. This is real empowerment, you know, when you have to go through, and that's what Saturn is. With all this heavy Saturn aspects, it's like Saturn doesn't just give you something for free. Saturn is not about giving you something for free. It's not about freebies. It's about, you're going to work for the reward. You're going to go through this hardship and then I'll give you the reward. That's total Saturn, all those heavy Saturn aspects. So what's coming up next? Well, June 30th, 2022, the new solar return of Canada. Yay. I am so excited to share that chart with you guys. So I will be sharing that. What day am I sharing that? I think it is on Saturday, this Saturday coming up. So if you would like to join in on the live Zoom recording, send me a message at Meg Moonbeam on Instagram or Facebook, or email me. I'll put my email in the description below and I'll send you the Zoom link. What else? So yeah, we've got 2 more presentations, a part of this webinar series. The next one is on the coming solar return. And then the part 4 is on the astrology of the key players. Justin Trudeau, the Queen, Pierre Poilievre. We'll look at some different people. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you've gotten this far, I'm sending you all so much love. I hope what I shared resonated, made sense to you guys. If you'd like to support my work, I have a PayPal donation link in the description below. I also do private astrology consultations, birth chart analysis, solar return analysis, all kinds of different astrology reading consultations. So my contact information is in the description below for that. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great week and see you next week for part 3. Thank you guys for watching.